broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We are in session for our fourth webinar of the year in our Crisis Coach 2018 webinar series. We're covering prevention before escalation today. We have 45 minutes. And if you would like, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a GoToWebinar dashboard, sort of a widget area. You can ask a question in the chat area through this area. And if I say area one more time, I'm afraid I'll be in trouble, so I won't. If you have any questions, Bill Baker is moderating for us today. Hello, Bill Baker. And he will let me know if you do have a question, and if we're not able to get to them by the end of today's session, he will email me those questions, and I'll respond to them as I can, as quickly as possible. We, as always, would like to connect with you on social media. You can follow us at Firestorm Soul on Twitter, at Firestorm Solutions on Facebook. We are continuity experts on YouTube, and you can watch past recordings of all of our sessions. And you can please follow us and connect with us on LinkedIn. All of our staff and our leadership is listed there, and you can connect individually with us as well. We're very active, and we'd love to see you on LinkedIn. Anytime you'd like to engage with us in a social setting, you can use Crisis Coach, and that is social media online, not a cocktail party, although you can use it there too. I would like to let you know that our attorneys would like you to know that this exercise or any webinar is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. Any work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with all guidance and that given by national, regional, and local authorities, and as well as your organization's personal counsel as well. Moreover, the information given and comments made in this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. Firestorm has expanded since the first of the year, and we're very excited to be able to offer you a full realm of services that range from broad crisis and risk solutions, including Crisis Coach and Crisis Stop. If you're on this session today and you have a crisis in your organization, you have access to Crisis Stop. Call our 1-800 number from 9 to 5. Bill Baker will direct your call to one of our senior leader crisis managers. And after hours, our 1-800 crisis team will direct your query and will help you immediately connect with someone who can help you walk through that crisis. And there is no charge for that hour of consultation. Our professional services include performing assessments. We develop plans and training, and that division is led by Wendy Ruffcorn, and she is one of the very best in the business. People Solutions, headed by Cheyenne Marling. We're very excited. People Solutions for Firestorm is a great acquisition, and if you are looking for great talent in our industry, we have a database of more than 60,000 professionals and the expertise of Cheyenne and her team. Additionally, if you're looking to explore new careers in our industry, Cheyenne can assist you as well. We now have a place on the Firestorm website, firestorm.com/top jobs. Where you can post or look for people or direct people you know who are looking to that area. Security Solutions, again, we're very pleased. We've just expanded our team with some of the best former Secret Service personnel that we can find. And we have such a depth of experience today that we are very excited to be able to work with you, your schools, and your organizations to help keep your students, your staff, and your employees safer. Our intelligence solutions also include artificial intelligence. Look for very exciting information coming out soon in that regard. And our analytical solutions include 6 major studies annually. 2 of those are active right now. You can participate in our IT resiliency study. If you go to the firestorm.com website, you can see it on the front page. And we also have made available currently our crisis Management Event Impact Study. It's out now. It's about 50 pages of very valuable data that will help you plan for the future, and that's available for purchase from our website. Any participant in any of our studies will receive a complimentary study, so we encourage you to participate. Today, we are supported by the terrific relationship we've had with the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. Dr. Martin has always been a great teammate to Firestorm in helping keep children, students, teachers, staff, and others on your properties, on your campuses safer. So we appreciate that relationship. If you'd like to learn more about the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, visit their website, TAIS.org, and learn more about TAIS, all of the schools that are part of the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, support resources, and more. I am Karen Masullo, and today we're going to be talking about anticipating a crisis through observing behaviors of concern. We're very specifically going to be looking at violent behaviors today for a very good reason. We've had, sadly, almost every week since the beginning of the year, some major incident of violence, either on our schools or in our businesses. And, you know, many folks think about an event as a singularity, something that happens but never happens to us. And we must start to realize that that's simply not true. Now, I will tell you there's hope. We're making progress. Your being on this webinar today is progress. It means that you've taken the time out of your day to make sure that you are covering all bases and have solutions in place. So we're going to take that just a bit further or farther, I'm never sure which it is, and move forward in what are the key components of an effective school violence program. And if you're on the call today and if you are joining us as a guest and you are not part of a school organization, do pop me a note, let me know. We do have a little bit of a different presentation for businesses, although all of the information in this presentation is absolutely applicable. But we would love to also talk with you and assist you to move your program forward. So number one, we know that we need leadership support. So if you're on this call today, I think we're getting leadership support. If you're a leader in your school, you're supporting it. And we want to work with not only our school, but those schools around us, those schools that are co-members of our associations, businesses that are next to us. So we want to expand it as not just a culture of safety and preparedness in our own location, on our own campuses, but for those organizations, businesses, and our community around us. We must have clear policies and procedures walking in. So we need to have a clear weapons policy. Now, a lot of companies and schools say, well, you know, we have a zero tolerance policy. Well, that's all well and good on paper, but what does that really mean? Is your policy enforceable? Do you enforce it? And how do you go about doing that? You know, something Jim Satterfield, our CEO, says, which I think is very wise. That is, go to your newest employee or your newest student or your newest whomever is on your property and ask them what your weapons policy is, what your bullying, your anti-bullying or harassment policies are, or what to do in case of an active event or a crisis, and see what their response is. And if they are unclear, if they don't know, if they've never been trained, you're one step closer to identifying what your next steps need to be. Any information you learn, no matter how disappointing it may be or encouraging it may be, allows you to move your program that much more forward. We also must be assured of our physical security. If we're in an older building, if our school is housed in a much older facility, we really need to look at how we can go about updating that facility in a way that doesn't interrupt operations, that isn't obtrusive, but that allows us a greater level of security. We also have a service that I think is fascinating. Jason Russell, our Chief Security Officer, who heads our Security Solutions Division, works now with the architect when a school is being built. So we are baked in to the blueprint, which allows us to make sure that from top to bottom, the school or your facility is as secure as possible. And that also allows us to think through and to test and train on a new facility. One of the challenges with Parkland, they'd spent millions of dollars on a state-of-the-art facility. And what happened? Those of you on the phone who are thinking about it, you know they left the gates open because they had to allow for egress through the gates at pickup time for students and parents. So that has to be baked into or thought into the plans, into the blueprints themselves. And that's what we want to make sure you're doing. If you have an older building and you don't have plans to renovate, let's go through, let's walk through and see what do we need to do, how do we need to do it. Do our doors lock from the inside? Are people propping doors open with a rock, as we've seen so many times for easy access to parking lots and other areas? And then once we have those pieces in place, we need to have a good behavioral risk threat assessment program. And that is what Firestorm calls BERTHA. We created that program over the period of about 6 years. We like to say for those of you that are ALICE schools, and ALICE is active shooter training. For those of you that are ALICE schools, we like to say BERTHA is ALICE's big sister. There is a video on the front of the Firestorm website, actually two, one by Susie Laughlin and one by Jim Satterfield, and that's a training day that we had with ALICE. So we've worked with the folks from ALICE, we cooperate and understand their training, and we'd like to see you complement that if it's in your school currently with, again, ALICE's big sister BERTHA. And then you must have a clear emergency and incident response plan. Again, it's got to be tested, it's got to be trained. Now, we asked you, how do we stop the madness? We asked, how concerned are you about behaviors of concern? And we said, shooting, bullying, violence. And almost, not quite 100% of you, 92% said they were either somewhat or very concerned. So we know this is not just something that we see happening. It's a national, it's an international issue. And we all must take steps to move our programs forward. And the good news is we're making progress. When we asked you if you knew how to anonymously report a behavior of concern, you said you did. And almost 91% of you said yes. Well, that's a huge improvement from last year and the year before, where we didn't even have anonymous reporting programs. If you need help with that, reach out to us. We can help you find the right people to suit your school, your culture, and your needs. The next thing we asked you was, does your organization have a designated team to review behaviors of concern? And this is a great improvement. This is up almost 20% from the last time we inquired, and 74% of you said yes, you do have a designated team to review behaviors of concern. We call that a BMT, or a behavioral management team. The reason we need that is because we know that almost every disaster, every incident of school or workplace violence, and even acts of terrorism were preceded by warning signals. The only one where I haven't been able to trace back real warning signals, posts on social media, people saying the person was threatening phone calls, was the shooting in Las Vegas. But almost every other incident that we've seen has some level of warning signs. And so we're going to look at threatening behavior versus behaviors of concern. So we're going to walk through 4 key areas or 5 key areas of behaviors. And we're going to look at how they relate to students who may be within your purview now, or things that you're working with your behavioral management team, your school psychologist, and others. So let's really become aware of what these behaviors are. You know, threatening behavior is very clear. It is a direct threat. We know when someone is either bullying someone or is a victim of bullying, or they are cyberbullying somewhere, or they are a victim of cyberbullying. We can see it. We have evidence, and there are fights. There is violence occurring. There is stalking or reports of cyber stalking, physical destruction of property, other people's property or their own, and there are real threats. You've heard them, you've seen them, you've been told that there is a direct, specific threat. I am going to beat you up at the end of the school day in front of where the buses pick people up. There's conditional threats. If you don't give me an A in this class, I am going to come back and blow up this classroom. There are veiled threats. Well, you know, I'd hate to see something happen to your car if I don't get the grade I want in this class. And then there are indirect threats. They lack specificity, but I don't know when and where something's going to happen. I just feel like something bad's going to happen, and we know that those are actually threats against either other students, teachers, etc. The other thing I want to remind us of is we're not only talking about behaviors of concern with students, but we need to be looking at these behaviors of concern with teachers, with others who are in employ within our organization, and parents. If you recall an instance in Colorado last year where father and son actually cooperated in order to create chaos and smoke bombs, that's a really unique situation, but of course it happens. So we really need to be on our toes and aware of anything that's direct, conditional, veiled, or indirect. And of course, someone who actually is reported to have had a weapon on them in school. We're not only talking about guns, we're also talking about other weapons, other things that can become weapons. And we have to think even more outside of that normal deadly weapons box and realize that aerosol containers can become weapons. Vehicles are weapons. People are using vehicles to attack others. So we really need to be thinking, what are the threats and how can I keep as many as possible from affecting those in my charge? Now, some behaviors of concern are clear red flags, and those are comments about suicide. We know that these are never a joke. And that's why we employ predictive intelligence. That's why we look at social media posts on Instagram and others so that we can see, for some reason, Instagram seems to be the place where kids show pictures of themselves cutting or self-harm in a variety of ways. We also need to be clear on the warning signals about intimidating comments about hurting someone else. It doesn't necessarily have to be student to student or teacher to student or student to teacher. It could just be, you know, oh, those people over at the McDonald's make me so angry, or something like that, where we see inappropriate threats against others, and then that leads to fits of rage. One thing I want to tell you is that we just recently we're conducting some tests on language, and what language was used by shooters, specifically for school shooters. We looked at a variety going all the way back to Columbine and the postings in the manifestos, and the word that continually came up to our attention was the word rage. And it is a clear indicator, once that rage turns into complete disdain and indifference, that becomes the tipping point. So there's self, there's a feeling of everything is about that person, and we'll get into that in a moment, and then that moves into rage. And when that rage crosses into that level of indifference to human life is when we have a real red flag. And we also see property being destroyed. No consideration at all for either the person's own property or the property of others, and harm as a result of the destruction of that property. Now, some red flags we see, so those are pretty clear red flags, right? Threats of suicide, property being destroyed. But some flags are not as clear, and we see this again and again, although, as we also saw with the YouTube person who shot at YouTube, that person did not fit some of the classic boxes we put people in because these are new and evolving. We do know that there is a pattern of a fascination with weapons or past criminals or violence. I'm very sad to tell you that if you did a search today on Columbine shooting fan sites, yes, I use the word fan, you would come up with a ton. And they're all over, and when they get shut down, new ones crop up. They are on every social media website, from YouTube to Instagram to Tumblr, and they are they express not only a fascination with weapons, but a fascination with the killers themselves. And we also saw with the most recent Parkland shooting, there were numerous posts where the shooter was posed with all types of weapons, from knives to guns to other types of weapons, and it was very disturbing. Depression is another flag that's not as clear, and because someone is depressed does not mean they're going to become a perpetrator of school violence, but we know that we have to keep an eye on that behavior, especially if that behavior is also being self-medicated, and there may be a dangerous mix of medications. And that leads into substance abuse and drugs and alcohol, especially if someone is self-medicating. They may be stealing prescription drugs from a relative. They may be mixing those drugs in a way that can create a psychotic break or a higher level of psychosis. And it may be also a situation of there is abuse in the home. Either the student is being abused, the student is abusing, it could be someone in our employ being abused, or they are abusing, and we must be aware of those less subtle red flags. And more important then is if someone tells us, I don't understand, Janie or Johnny used to be so active in this and that sports team or this and that club, and now they just sit by themselves. So we start seeing that person withdrawing from classmates or teammates or friends and activities, and we must pay attention to that red flag. When we look at a behavioral snapshot, we look at a few different things. There are 5 key behavioral areas that we look at. And around those 5 key areas, we have protective factors, and we'll talk about how we can help support someone who may be exhibiting signs or behavioral warnings through those protective factors. But what are those behaviors of concern we might need to look at? Well, we know that in general behaviors, we must be aware of a student from the time they come into our organizations, not just until they leave, but oftentimes after they leave as well, especially if they have left our school because of a disciplinary action or they have been expelled. But we don't have students just for a week or a year. We have students for the life of their education. Many Tennessee Association of Independent Schools go from pre-K to the end of someone's high school career. I went to a school, I went to an all-girls school for a while that was pre-K through early college. And so those teachers who knew us from a very young age. And that's why it's very important that we keep a record of our interactions, of our observations in a central place. So we're not having disparate pieces of information that are never connected floating around. We cannot put the pieces of the puzzle together without creating some sort of central repository of information. And that is where we are able to say, does this person have a history of discipline problems? Do we know that they have access to or may own firearms? Do they have a history of taking criticism poorly? And do they right fight? When they have been given a direction and they feel that they've been given the direction incorrectly, do they fight and fight because they can't let it go, that they may be wrong? Have we witnessed and documented a dramatic change in their performance in school? Do they have consistently poor school relationships? Do they have are they overly preoccupied with school policies and procedures? And they're not only perceiving those procedures and policies to be unfair, but targeted at them specifically. Have we documented that they've sent concerning emails or text or inappropriate or concerning phone calls, inappropriate or concerning social media posts, which is why we need to be monitoring social media? Is there direct or indirect threatening communication through notes, social media, anonymous statements? Have they written in papers, documents, manifestos, drawings, or other writings some consistently violent themes? And is there a history of violence, anger, or aggressive behavior, either against peers, teachers against students? Again, we're not just talking about student behavior, we're talking about all behaviors of those involved in our schools. Has there been harassment, sexual harassment, or intimidation? Again, drug or alcohol abuse. And a key is someone who was normally tidy and neat and clean, suddenly disheveled and displaying poor hygiene. We had a situation where there was a distinct change in an employee's hygiene of a school, and his students were making comments on it, and it turned out that the reason was because the person had lost their home and they were living in their car. They were becoming increasingly depressed and despondent, and fortunately there was intervention before something escalated. But there can be many reasons why, and the reason why is this. This is the reality. These are two brothers who were at Parkland. One was downstairs, one was upstairs. The older brother realized his younger brother was upstairs in the school and started texting him. He says, "We're going to get out of here, I promise," saying yes. And then we see the post that the teacher has died. No child should have to see this. This just happened. This is reality. Now, when we look at the social and the peer group, do we see a problem with someone holding a grudge? And it's an odd sort of grudge to have. Someone brushed by someone in the hall and it happened 3 years ago, and the person is still angry, and that anger is growing over it. Someone cut in front of someone in line, and suddenly there's odd and erratic behavior because of it, and actually creates fear in other people. When students are coming to each other saying, I don't know, that girl weirds me out, or that guy really scares me, we need to listen to that. Is suddenly someone talking about being intolerant of differences? Are they also withdrawing socially, not interacting? And may they be the victim of bullying or violence? Are they starting to identify with violent groups? Very sadly, and we've seen testimony from Facebook all this week, it's really easy to find today information on violent groups. Students were always able to see that kind of information, but over the past 20 years, really violent images and information are more pervasive and easier to come by than ever before. Is the person posting angry or threatening statements on social media, are they parroting what they've seen, either on websites or in their own homes? Are they using highly abusive language, racist language, sexist language? And are they demonstrating poor response to limit setting, to rules and regulations? Next, we want to look at the family. Do we know if there is any confirmed abuse in the home? And has there been any major change? A divorce, a custody issue perhaps? Financial losses, a change in financial status? Multiple losses. Oh gosh, we dealt with someone who they had lost one of their parents, a sibling, a grandparent, and a very close friend, all within a period of about 8 months. And it was a highly traumatic situation. You know, the reality is that some of these behaviors are openly discussed. They're out there. This was the shooter in Parkland. He posted, I'm going to be a professional school shooter. This was on the YouTube channel. And the person who owned this YouTube channel reported it. So we've made a lot of progress. The person who saw this didn't think it was a joke. They reported it to the FBI. They spoke to the FBI about this shooter. Let's look at other behaviors of concern. Psychological. Do we see the person who we're concerned about displaying thoughts or feelings of persecution? Is everyone out to get that person? Are they deluded in thinking that? Or do they live in some other type of fantasy? Do they have very poor coping skills? Have they demonstrated an inability to cope with the normal stresses? Are they demonstrating feelings of isolation or being alone, or feelings of rejection and shame? Conversely, do they have a sense of entitlement? Are they the king or the queen and everything is about them? Have they expressed to others via social media that there are suicidal or homicidal thoughts? I am every day shocked and saddened at how many people express thoughts of self-harm on social media, specifically on Instagram. Do they have a diagnosed mood disorder, or do we suspect an undiagnosed or unmedicated disorder? Are they preoccupied with weaponry and fascinated with violent fantasy? Do we see that their anger is either under controlled or over controlled? Do they have a blank affect, or are they responding inappropriately to small perceived slights? Do they have feelings of being bullied, picked on, or persecuted? You know, this is another post by the shooter in Parkland. And he said, Elliot Rodger will not be forgotten. Someone replies, you say that like it's a good thing. Someone laughs. Excuse me for also posting something that has some pretty strong language. But do you know who Elliot Rodger is? And it's important you do if you don't. Elliot Rodger left 10 hours of YouTube manifestos before he got in his car and drove around the UCLA campus shooting people. We can read, there is an archive of the words, the exact words of Elliot Rodger. And they're important to study and to understand. And they tell us a great deal about who this person is and the cues that we can look for. We also look for those behaviors of concern that let us know we have an immediate issue. We know someone has a weapon on them somewhere, BB gun, whatever. Someone saw something, someone said something. They have made a direct threat of violence against someone else. They are fighting continually with classmates, peers, or family. An injury has resulted. And let me let you know, if we're in a situation where we have to suspend or expel someone from our facility, that is the most important time for us to be following up and observing their behavior. I had a conversation with Wendy Ruffcorn, who's one of the co-architects of our behavioral risk threat assessment program. And Wendy and I were talking about the situation in Parkland, and she said, I bet they were monitoring him while he was in school, but I wonder if they were monitoring him at the most important time, and that is when he was expelled. We know that disgruntled employees return to the workplace and do damage. We've seen it happen in all types of businesses, including schools. So we know the moment of separation is one where rage may escalate inappropriately. And it's one of the times when we really need to be on alert, alert people in our organization, alert authorities, and keep an eye on our intelligence network to understand if there is an escalation of anger. There is severe rage for seemingly minor instances in this urgent period. The person is self-injurious, they are stalking, they are cyber stalking, and they may have been suspended or expelled, or we have suspended or expelled them and they have come back onto or tried to come near our property. This is the reality. This is the Shooter's Manifesto from the 2015 Oregon College rampage. I don't know if you recall that. We should. And he says, ever since I arrived in this world, I've been under siege from it, under attack from morons and idiots. There is that level of not only rage, but it moves into that sort of indifference of individuals. My whole life has been one lonely enterprise, completely isolated. One loss after another. We just discussed that. And here I am, 26, with no friends, no job, no girlfriend, a virgin. I long ago realized that society likes to deny people like me these things. And he, too, had a fascination with the shooters at Columbine, with Elliot Rodger. We had clear signs on social media. The protective factors are you. Personal attachments, feelings of respect the person may have, interest outside of school, hobbies, sports, arts, a respect for authority or a respect for a person in authority. the ability to learn positive coping skills, and the ability to take responsibility for actions. Our school psychologists and others, our leaders, you, these are the protective or positive factors that we want to nurture and encourage. And it's working. This type of approach is working. If we can spot behaviors of concern early and intervene with a variety of tools, of coaching, of documentation, every day we're seeing not only are plots thwarted, but people are seeing behaviors, reporting them, and intervening before the violence occurs. Do these headlines sell newspapers or digital ads? No, but they're out there. And you're part of this solution, and it is working. I know it's frustrating. We see stories where someone reported something and no one did anything. We knew that something wasn't right. But if we have a good intelligence network that monitors all types of communication, we can be that much closer to stopping one incident of violence, a death, a serious injury, a suicide, or harm to others, a fascination with harming others. We can keep all of this information in a central place when someone is exhibiting different types of behavior or behaviors that are out of the norm for their character. And instead of them being written on a note or having a teacher say, oh, I forgot to tell you, Johnny stopped handing in his homework a week ago, we can start to put together a picture and a puzzle that we can nurture and guide away from violence. The Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Program is a program and a process that's intended to assist you in identifying, assessing, managing, and monitoring anyone exhibiting behaviors of concern. It starts with awareness, which is what we're talking about today, and couple that with an intelligence network that includes social media monitoring, anonymous reporting, call center reporting, peer and colleague discussion and reporting, pre-screening, background checks. And then all of that information, all of that awareness is kept in a central place so that a team or the person in charge or a behavioral team can look at that information, categorize the risk, perform a screening, monitor for future behavior, and keep a violent incident from occurring. We need to implement awareness training, an intelligence network that includes anonymous reporting into a central repository, and then implement the full behavioral risk threat assessment process. Now, we do this today through the help of the University of Alabama for Schools. The University of Alabama has been a great partner for Firestorm in that they completely believe 100% in our behavioral risk threat assessment program, so much so that they became our partner in turning all of our training into a web-based behavioral management team training center. Upon securing a license for BERTHA, and you can visit our website to learn more about that, or you can email me at webinars@firestorm.com and we'll tell you all about it. But you can start your whole program on your team on virtual training. It's on demand and it's accessed via the University of Alabama's e-learning platform. And there is a great introduction by a wonderful woman named Brenda Truelove, and our own Jim Satterfield is in this issue in as well. It includes documents for learning, a central document repository, and a full scenario and simulation sessions for your entire team, and a library where you can keep all of your information. And we're there to help you develop a central repository, whether it be cloud-based or other, unlimited virtual assistance with your behavioral risk screenings, and of course ongoing program support through our expert team. So where do you start? What do you need to do right now? What do you need to have in place? Well, we need to make sure we're training all staff on behaviors of concern. We need to have a named behavioral management team. We need to have some sort of open source intelligence program, whether it's monitoring social media through a formal third-party group like Firestorm, or whether you're doing that internally. You also need to have anonymous reporting that's a part of that intelligence network, and then a central repository where all that reported information gets logged. And then you need a detailed process for developing the action plan that you will use to monitor individuals that are identified as needing assistance. All right, what's next? We have a variety of resources at firestorm.com briefs on our website. I was going to add a couple of documents to the GoToWebinar console today, but I wasn't able to, so I will email those of you on the call, and you'll receive a PDF from me on today's session. And please register for next month's session. Next month's session will be a follow-up that will talk about exactly what to do when an incident does occur on your property. Again, it's only a 45-minute session, and it'll help give you some good tips to move your program forward. As always, you can find information on our website. We've got a great infograph, how to spot the warning signs, connecting the dots. And again, as always, we would like to thank the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools for underwriting and sponsoring this session today. Thank you for joining, taking time from your day. I appreciate it. My name is Karen Masullo. You can reach us at webinars@firestorm.com or call our 1-800 number and speak to today's moderator, Bill Baker, and we'll help you with any crisis you may be encountering. That's it for today. Thanks for joining, and have a great day. This will end our session.